Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Move Show. Tonight's episode of Xtreme TV. I'm your host, Rob, along with Professor Pixel. Tonight, we're covering Twin Peaks Season 2, Episode 10. Wonderful ABC TV show that, Professor, as we talked about before, anybody that's a fan of Twin Peaks realizes that the whole Who Killed Laura Palmer mystery was incredible. And we finally know who did it. We don't know why. We don't know the motives. But we actually technically don't have the killer because the technical killer, the spirit Bob, who infiltrated the body of the one-armed man, or excuse me, Mr. Leland Palmer, the father. Leland's gone, and so what the hell do we do now? And crisis mode. I don't know if the show knows, because in my opinion, this is the worst episode of all of them. It has some interesting things in it, but it's got some poor editing, questionable writing choices, and this is where really people just start saying, screw this ABC, you don't know what the hell you're doing with the show. You're also screwing what time slot you're going to be on. This is when Twin Peaks really went into the toilet until the last couple of episodes of the season to tie everything up, because a lot of stuff is introduced in here. We get some plot lines kind of reaffirmed, reestablished. Okay, this is now this person's showing up, we're going to go in this direction. So to me, this is the first episode of Twin Peaks that really didn't feel like Twin Peaks, except for maybe a few cinematic shots or whatever, and the scoring editing was not good to me. So I want to try to focus on the positive, but also illustrate the negative. But if we focus, I think, on some of the bigger themes that we've discussed since the beginning of episode 1, the 2-hour premiere, that might help us get through it. What's your take?
Yeah, no, I have to agree. This is one of the worst episodes of the series that I've seen. I mean, it was bearable. I can say that at least. I mean, starting right off the bat, we know something's different. It's the only episode that we've had that's gone ahead and skipped days at a time. And until then, the series has been day after day after day. And now we're jumping straight into the funeral of Leland. I mean, at the start of it, whenever we're dealing with Sarah, because the doc is there and wants to give her a sedative to calm her down, but she says that she has to be awake, and Dale is trying to comfort her. I mean, I guess that's nice, but it's just so out of left field almost. Obviously this was coming, but they rushed into it.
I agree with you on that. It was a nice touch of Sarah saying, I wanted to be, present, because it seems like she's been, since episode 1, when she screams, completely out of it, which understandably so, with her daughter dying and then finding the killer. But to me, there's still questions about Sarah, like, why did she go upstairs or call, Bob upstairs, or Mr. Leland upstairs, and then come down from when Leland was killing her? And you and I have talked about how there's like a spiritual element to it. She's one of the people that for some reason can see who the killer was. At times, Maddie was another one. So we don't know if it was a family thing, but it looks like other people might too. So I don't think it's a genetic thing or something along the line. And it's nice when Cooper kind of comforts her in the right way, basically supporting the family while acknowledging what happened here too. It was tasteful. I think it's a neat scene in that you get to see almost every single person, no matter how big or how popular they are, in one long extended scene shot where they're talking. And in a way, it does feel like it's, the dinner that you have, at the end of one of these funeral things here. And it's like, you see some stuff, people talking and things going on. Dr. Jacoby, we see back. We see Garland Briggs back too. And it's nice, but it's long. Nothing really happens. You get the Milford brothers. One of them was, I guess, the
Waldorf and
mayor
Statler.
of it. Yeah, I mean, it's nice, I guess, and it's an interesting idea when we talk about it. But watching it, it doesn't do anything. It's just boring. And then from there, they cut to the high school where Jacoby's there and Ed, and they're asking the principal to let Nadine go to classes because we know she's super strong. She thinks she's young or whatever. And it's absurd. So we're 10, 15 minutes maybe in this episode. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Pardon my French. I'm trying to use that here.
Yeah, I also have to bring up the fact that the shots in this episode, like the transition shots, are just weird. Like, they don't feel right. Like, how they're cut in and where they're placed just doesn't feel like it's making sense. In that first scene, after Cooper comforts Sarah and says, I'd be honored if I could drive you, we get this stair shot, like we're looking up and we're supposed to see something up there. There's nothing up there. It's just a shot of the stairs.
Well, what that reminds me of, I mean, it starts off with a beautiful outdoor shot, because I think some of the outdoor shots are nice, but you're right, as far as the transition, it's like, okay, what's the point here? You know, when we're looking up at the ceiling fan, that was kind of like the same shot we got when we heard her scream way back in episode 1. So I'm wondering if they said, okay, we'll put that in there as a call shot or something, you know, just to maybe redo it. And I think they've showed it one other time with something, but I don't remember which episode, but I think Leland had to do it. So this is where Twin Peaks, I think some of the people that directed it said, you know what? We can just do this as a transition scene because, hey, it worked and it was something we focused on before. You know, just like coffee and other things have become kind of little Twin Peaks nuances that we've enjoyed, but it still has to be not overdone,
Relevant.
but also effective. Yeah, it seemed like it was there, and I think what you're trying to say is it's just a shot for shot's sake rather than having an impact on a meaning or anything, or at least that's how I took it.
Yeah, no, that is basically what I mean, because whenever we go to the lodge, we get that shot from the waterfall and we see the lodge up there, and it's a basic transition shot. Okay, that's fine. That's what we're used to. The stairs, just things are thrown in like that. The waterfall that comes up soon, well, I'll get to that when we get there. The first thing we get is this train shot.
Yeah, well, I'm going to mention the same thing that you're talking about, but in terms of music, one thing that did throw me off was that when they're all eating and sitting down or whatever, a lot of the ladies are talking, and one of them's talking to Sarah Palmer here. So I don't know if she's going to be a character, but it looks like she's in a wheelchair. Can't quite tell. Or maybe it's just the seat backing. But I looked at her eyes and I go, God, she looks really, really familiar. And I looked her up, and that's Zooey Deschanel's mother, who was involved in the show. At least I believe it is. Looks just like her spitting image. You take Zooey and add 10, 15 years, you get this lady, you know, attractive middle-aged lady, apparently a friend of the Palmers. But, you know, I filed that away under probably not a character, because any characters that got introduced, it felt like they got introduced. This one, they're just talking. Like I say, nothing happens. At least, or so I'm not getting it. The message is really just not received. So I'm kind of like, okay, whatever. Yeah, and then we get to the shot, like I say, after the high school thing, which was ridiculous. Cooper's packing up because she's ready to get out of there. Audrey comes in, and yes, she's quote unquote a teenager, even though I thought she was alluded to that she was 18.
No, she's 18.
Okay,
She said
so
that she was 18.
She comes in, and you know, this is the couple that we always want to see, kind of, you know, this chemistry between them, and they do really, really good. But of course, he's being the nice guy, the responsible adult in the relationship when he doesn't have to. But of course, here we get all the reasons why Cooper can't, and it's pretty good because he mentions this lady that he was protecting died in his arms, and it was his fault because he was in love with her. And of course, it's implied here that if he cares for Audrey too much, then something bad may happen to her. And I get it; it makes sense. But there's a part that says, man, Cooper, she was warm to you. She didn't act like a rebuffed young woman that got all snarky and everything else there too. She respects you and sees you as a man. She doesn't want a boy. So it almost seemed like it was patriarchic here, the way he was talking to her, like he was almost dressing her down a little bit. But then they go into this detail and stuff. I don't know if it's the look on his face or what. I mean, but I'm looking at this going, man, if she wanted to, you know, put an ice pick through your eye, I could understand it, because he almost was a dick in here. He wasn't, but there's just something about the way this scene was that I'm going, okay, I don't know, because he's like, well, I'll always be your friend. There's not a man on this planet that says that to any woman that's of legal age and has an interest in it. He might just say something else or whatever, but that just seemed really, I don't know, you're a girl, and what the hell are you even doing being interested in me, even though it's happened before. So I don't know. It didn't seem, it really, when I talk about a scene doing something, you know, we usually say it's advancing part of the writing, but when you think of it in terms of characters, it's like, which character is being made to look better in here? Yes, we get some detail to their, or at least to his past life, but Audrey looks foolish for even thought about liking him, the way he's talking, and the way he's talking. It's like, you were kind of intrigued by her. Don't act like you weren't. And yes, I understand this big story that you're introducing with the partner, Wyndham Earl. That he'd gotten the chess piece mail that we may have forgotten a few episodes back, and it was mentioned that this Wyndham Earl went crazy. Okay, it's important enough for your backstory. We're going to use it as a reason not to get with Audrey. We get it, but again, up to this point, doesn't feel like Twin Peaks. There's no magic here.
Yeah, no, I have to agree. And that, you know what that takes us to? The waterfall shot that's thrown in randomly when we go to Bobby, Leo, and Shelley, which doesn't make any sense, but I digress. She's basically telling Bobby that she's so tired of watching after Leo all the time. She wants to go out. She'll get a babysitter or whatever. But
just because a girl's having all sorts of negative decision making in her life doesn't want to stop her from partying.
Yeah. And Bobby at that point is saying that he'll take care of her after he goes and has this interview with Ben Horn, saying that it'll all be okay. That's pretty much the scene. I mean, there's not a lot else to dissect out of it.
There's two things about it I wanted to point out really quickly. One, it's kind of funny with the way Leo's holding the mirror up in there, so it's kind of a neat little prop. But for me, there's the scene where well, actually, we can just bring it up now because actually it's the next time we see them. She gets on the phone or whatever, and she's talking, and we see the wheelchair move just a little bit the way it's shot, and she's like, "Oh my God, he came after me." And you know what? We've already had this happen with Leo, where it looked like he moved just an instant, and that was kind of terrifying. And then we had the scene where he's spitting oatmeal, red shoes, and now we get him just holding stuff. So now this guy that was really sinister at the beginning is like a comedy prop. And it's not working.
Well, I don't know if it's not working.
It's not funny, and it's not serious. They plot and scheme to get her husband, who's like this, to take his money. And so how are we supposed to feel about it? At first, it's like, oh, he's pretending, or oh, he's going to get his faculties back. We don't know that, but like I've said, since we've seen at least 3 different scenes over 3 different episodes now of what's going on here. It just seems like instead of the sinister guy that we start off with being involved in bad things in the town and even having relations with Laura and Renette and whatnot, to a guy that's wearing party hats, spitting up oatmeal, yelling red shoes, looking like he's got a 60 IQ if he ever gets a chance to talk, and he just sits there. So you start off with this really powerful figure, and you turn him into what's supposed to be this funny thing between them, and it's like they're doing a sinister thing, and they do have a young kind of chemistry with each other, but it's not working. No character is getting elevated. No character is being elevated in the negative sense, like they're really a bastard, because we know how Bobby and Shelley are, and Leo is like 10 times worse, and now you've got him in the wheelchair spitting up oatmeal. It's not working. His chin's holding up the glass. I don't know. And it may be that because of the 15 minutes before and not liking what they're doing, all of a sudden now we're 25% way through or a third of the way through the episode. We're just now going, well, this sucks. I guess everything else is going to suck too, right? Because there's nothing for me to like or enjoy. And we get a great acting scene next with Captain Martell showing up into the Sheriff Truman's office, where she tells a nice little story. I mean, what did you think of this?
I have to bring up the fact that we get a random drain shot.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. What the hell's the point of that?
No, it's just dripping water. And when we get to Harry's office and Catherine's there, she starts spewing the worst shit I've heard. Do you believe in guardian angels? An angel led me that night. And she talks about hiding out in the woods. Doesn't mention the fact that she was Mr. Tajimura for the past couple weeks now.
Yeah.
It feels like it. And it's really just annoying. We're being dragged through a scene that we know is just bullshit. And then from there,
I don't know. That's the whole point.
It's absolutely bullshit.
It's so overacted, and I think she's so great at it. I'm thinking this is supposed to be what really happened, even though she was Taji Moore. She's only telling him basically of that night. And the weird thing is she's dressed up like she's got her walking cane and her gloves on, and it looks like she just came down from there when we know she hasn't. So we know she's lying. You're right. But the whole story about guardian angels and being led to the cabinet they have, mentioning place there, makes me think of Leland Palmer talking about, him growing up on I don't know if it was the same lake or not or whatever. But it draws upon past history, which right now in this episode is the most interesting about Twin Peaks, because the plot lines aren't. This just looked like a chunk of dialogue that somebody in a junior college class would sit there and say, okay, Twin Peaks, Catherine Martell, scene 4, check. And you could just see her walk around going, well, let me stand here, pause on this. And I love the character and the way she's been acted. It's been fantastic. And I got fooled by Taji Moore, even though we knew something wasn't on the up and up. But we were so engrossed in the show, we didn't let our brains kind of compute that out. And here I'm with you. I'm going, what's the whole point here in this episode telling all this stuff? Guardian Angel, whatever, this and that. Okay. Is it just to let viewers know? To me, it comes across as just giving her a scene to do something.
I can agree to that. And to make matters worse, we go from here to Dick and Lucy saying, oh, I want to be a father. Then Hawk is walking by. He shakes his head as Dick's trying to explain how important that bambino is to him. And he stops Andy and he makes a motion like, what the hell, man? You got to go fight for your girl. No, he doesn't. This is bullshit. So then Andy, deputy dumbass, he also climbs on this ladder that Lucy's on. It just feels ridiculous. But Lucy obviously wants Andy, as he's trying to say, we all need to be friends, or what I'm sorry, I'm just frustrated because this scene is it's so stupid. In dealing with Lucy, Dick, and Andy, I have just been annoyed in this show that I've enjoyed every episode that we've seen so far. And this on top of everything else that we're going through, it's annoying. And once Andy is done talking, he goes over to Hawk, and Hawk's like, what the hell, man? Andy says, I know I know what Lucy wants. She wants a man's man. You don't think I was too rough in there, do you?
I don't have a problem with, even in a show, having issues of, sexuality or masculinity explored, even in something like this where he shot the guy, even though he seemed like he was a sensitive person. And then you're like, holy crap, he's definitely got some nuts. And, Lucy was getting all wet, when she heard about it and everything too. And I agree with you in that I'm looking at this going, shaking my head going, I get this is supposed to be the goofy love triangle. I don't like how it's played out with playing the kid off the two fathers at all. I like it even less now that I'm older. And the only thing out of the scene that I thought might have had merit would have been Richard Tremaine coming in and, it's like a wink and a nudge to another guy basically saying, hey, I'm going to get the girl. I'm going to F you over. I'm going to prove to her that I can do stuff, because that's what he's doing. But watching it through adult eyes, you look at it and go, this is pathetic. She wouldn't want either one. She just loves the attention she's getting from both. And at this point, I'm going, is she even pregnant? It's like, if she comes out of this and she's not, I'm going to be completely pissed. So I don't see where there's any conflict coming up where she's going to end up making a choice. So this is like, who killed Laura Palmer? We don't know. That was the whole point of the show. And the whole point of the show was to never have that answered so we could explore the lives and backstories as people, which they're doing. But now they said, well, we've given up the big thing. Now we're stuck with all these characters that were interesting in the roles and how they fit into the bigger picture. But now it's just a soap opera, and you've taken the detective element out of it, unless we get into some weird stuff, which we'll talk about here for the end of the episode. And it seems like that's the choice that they were kind of forced to take, because ABC screwed everything up by revealing a killer and trying to dumb it down for fans because they didn't think they had a smart audience. And TV execs never know what's best. And especially in a cutting edge show like this, which is completely different than a lot of things on TV, the way it was done, the way it was written, as opposed to just a soap opera. If this was just, Twin Peaks in the afternoon, and it was a afternoon soap opera for lunchtime ladies at home, that would work fine. Just knowing these characters and going, oh my God, now Richard Tremaine, maybe he's not the father, maybe there's a third one, dun dun dun, maybe it's somebody else, maybe Lucy's this closeted lesbian and she's gonna. Okay, we can expect that from a soap opera, and this is only supposed to be part of one. But this scene does not work at all. I agree with you totally, and it's very frustrating watching it. I'm trying not to rant too much about this whole thing, but it just it's foolish. So Tremaine might have had something here because he's got of a dapper sensibility about him, even though he seems as bad as Deputy Dumbass. It's like their masculine traits are certainly not being emphasized at all here. And let's be honest, Lucy's cute, but she wears granny clothes, and she has that high mousy voice, which at first she was kind of neat as the mother hen, keeping her role of keeping the sheriff's office kind of running was really, really neat. So we kind of liked her for that. But as a gonna be probably single mom, unless she finds an inedible suitor here, I don't know. Thankfully it's not a long scene is all I can say. But I will say that one of the best scenes in this episode is next, and that's when Cooper goes into the office with Truman. And while we know that they respect each other, I didn't realize how much of a bromance they really, really had, because as a parting gift, Truman gives him a hand-tied green butt skunk lure for fishing, which I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. And he gives him a bunkhouse patch that he can say, hey, whenever you're there, we're always going to be there for you, one of us. And this was kind of cool because they'd been through a lot together over the past month or so. He says goodbye to everybody there, and then when he goes to walk out, we get the big Cooper plot development of his boss coming in with what looks like a Royal Canadian Mountie guy, who, by the way, I think was the bad cocaine gun and Die Hard and other stuff. He's an 80s fixture, so you look at him, you go, oh, God. And basically it looks like Cooper screwed up, and he's going to have to pay the price for it. So whether Cooper was going to or not in the show didn't really matter to me necessarily. But I certainly don't mind the realism of trying to introduce this as an angle, as it were, here. Because the guy who comes in as his boss, he played like this creepy zombie master in a movie already at this point here too. I forget the name of it, but it was really good. So he's an intense personality, even though he's quite soft-spoken. But okay, Cooper's got a bunch of crap going on, and everything is laid out for it too. But I thought it was an interesting scene and development in terms of writing, but the only one so far in this episode. What's your take?
The scene is fine. The problem with this scene is that the music that plays in the background.
It's Laura's theme. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not right.
I agree totally. And this is the scene I'm thinking about when we were talking about things that aren't edited or scored right in the show. It's distracting. It's so bad. It's distracting.
Yeah, and I just don't get why they would go to that. And sadly, even when we go to the best woman on the show after in 1 second, it doesn't look like it's going to get a lot better, because we're in the lodge. Audrey sees Bobby hanging out by the door after he's talked to this woman about seeing Ben Horn. And Audrey, she's carrying this weird basket. I don't know why the hell she's carrying it. It doesn't matter. She hands it off to Bobby and says to count to 10. So he starts twirling the basket around. And once he's done, she comes back, takes the basket, and says, you just have to know the right people. We get a quick moment with Ben and Bobby. And he makes a call over the intercom. I'm trying to remember exactly what he says. There's a fly in my office, something like that. And his security guards come in. They take him, and they're pulling him along. Audrey tells them to get off of him. And so Bobby's trying to say, he's basically trying to get the tape to Ben, so that way Ben can be blackmailed. And Ben's not having any of it. I don't know if Ben has heard the tape at all. but it's really just untouched. So Ben's only appearance in this episode, I believe, is just him sitting there for a minute with sunglasses saying, there's a fly in my office. Can you come here? And that's, I don't know.
The only thing cool about the scene is if you're a cigar aficionado, he's got what looks like one of these old school hand pumps to light something up. It's like a friction pump, kind of like an air hose that can work in those certain survival conditions too. It's kind of neat because he's what we call the world's most interesting man character on the show, because he's very dapper. He has, it seems to be that sort of interest in old school like men's stuff, because he's got a smoking jacket on. So I want to like the scene, and you know, Bobby's wearing Leo's tux or a suit which is too big for him, doesn't fit, even though when you're looking at him the sleeves look like 6 inches too short. So it totally breaks character with all that stuff. And a character is the thing we'll talk about, because we know Ben to be the kind of smart, devious one that really appreciates when he's challenged, and it's a legit challenge, like with Catherine Martell. So it's quite like it's like a smart, sinister quality he has. It's a business ruthlessness about him that I appreciate and respect. And even though he may not be the best businessman in the world as far as ethically concerned, I'm not going to say who is and defend him, but what I will defend him in this scene is that you're right. The only scene we see him in, he's portrayed cartoonish, rather than the guy that, you know, had that little outburst when Catherine kind of played him and stuff. To me, I would expect him to like have his hands like in this little triangle steeple pose, you know, while he's plotting and scheming behind his mahogany desk looking stuff. And here it's totally not the Ben we know, just like it's totally not the Audrey we know when Bobby gets thrown out and his security detail, his muscle basically throws him out, and they have this conversation. She takes him arm like a classy lady and all that, and then she wants ice cream and stares at him and says, well, I like the lick. And it's like, okay, Audrey would never go for this boy, for this child, even though he's the number one guy. Even Laura dumped him for James. You know what? I miss James because this episode is so bad. I do. I'm just going to throw it out there.
I don't know. He just doesn't show up. And her saying that's a line you'd expect to hear from her in episode 3 of season 1, maybe. But she has totally changed within the past week and a half.
She's going from flirty to a vamp overnight. And even if she felt like she was aware of and even trying to act comfortable in her own sexuality, she was still acted like she was trying to learn how to command it 100%. And then here it acts like she's used it all the time to get what she wants, and it doesn't seem like it's fit for her character. And he's got Shelley, and I know he's tired of having to quote unquote support Shelley. So Bobby's character hasn't done much in quite some time, because frankly in that scenario he'd be out the damn door. So it makes sense, but part of me's going, really? She walks out of Cooper's office or room the same day, saying goodbye, saying, "Oh, Agent Cooper, just remember, one of these days I'm going to be, a good girl, and you better watch out, mister," which is like the worst line ever in this whole friggin' show. And we go from that to her, hooking up with Bobby, or at least looking at him. I mean, it makes sense, but they just don't seem like a match. It's, give it a day. If your dog died, you're allowed to cry for a day, and then after I get over it. But yeah, it just doesn't work. The only scene that felt like Twin Peaks a little bit, kind of, as far as what we've gotten used to the first episode or first season or two, is this next scene where you've got Cooper being interrogated by his boss and the Mountie guy talking about stuff. So it's a big info dump, and they show pictures of the Reno brothers and things about going on, and it's the logistical details, the legal pieces of information that, for us as a viewer, kind of it's a filler. Like, hey, this is what's going to go forward. So Cooper's going to be hanging around. We kind of made apparent of that because he has to give up his gun and his badge, and he's escorted out. I do like how the Mountie guy here is restrained and not really saying too much in all of it. And I do like how Truman's a little bit like, no, I'm not going to, I'm going to stand. I'm not going to sit. And, if I understand my rights, you can't say this or that or whatever. So, get some coffee on the way out. And it's like they forced that line in there. So I thought that was an okay scene. I'm going to stop here and let you comment on it, and I'm going to let you take us into the next scene, which is the cheerleader scene.
Oh, if I have to. No. I'm just kidding. My thoughts on it. No, I do agree. It does feel like most of the interrogation scenes we've had thus far in the series. It's just that Cooper's on the receiving end. And when Harry's in there saying that he won't be giving a statement, you're going to have to order me to give one. It's really powerful. It really shows that their friendship has come to this point. Because he says again, and he keeps repeating, that Agent Cooper is the best lawman he knows. And thus far, I have to agree. I'm just a little, I don't know. I feel like this is something that would have been handled after he gets back to like the main office.
Yeah. Not in town, absolutely not. You'd have him in, you'd have him write a report, you'd question the report. You'd say, well, there's some inconsistencies in your statements here. Are you sure this is going to be the final report that you have? Well, this is what we have. Absolutely. It's getting to a point where the setups, even the ones we allow ourselves to kind of not scrutinize too much, are becoming almost impossible to watch. It's
And then we go from there to high school, where Nadine should not be. No. It's just idiotic. I don't care how immersive you need to make her life to gently transition her into reality, but you do not place this woman in high school.
Nope.
But
this is the scene that where it jumps the shark. The whole episode. We could say it was a bad episode. Things kind of stupid. Maybe we don't agree with things. Maybe we don't like it because we thought things would play out and they didn't, and so we either feel dumb or cheated or whatever. Weak things happen. All writing's not going to be great, but it's totally unnecessary. And this is where we need to start embracing the weirdness or suckage or whatever you want to call it about this remaining 10 episodes of the show, assuming it continues on this path. Maybe some of these lines will turn out okay and we don't like them now, but it's ridiculous.
Yep, and Nadine just shows it, because as she enters, it's for cheerleading tryouts. She does a flip, and the people are genuinely impressed. But in her excitement after flipping, she takes a guy and throws him up into the air. Honestly, I was expecting him to fall and break his neck. But no, he instead falls into a bunch of people playing on like a volleyball court or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just
horrible.
It's really bad. It is really, really bad.
The next scene is the one where I talked about earlier, where Leo's in the chair and Shelley gets a call from Bob, and she's like, oh, it must have been the longest meeting, which means he was out on this ice cream date. She's like, yeah, she has a great line here. She's like, yeah, I love you, Bobby, still, but I want a life. And I get it too, because in her position, she's young, she wants to have a life, and this isn't the life she wanted, and I get it. Yeah, she's there brushing her husband's teeth or whatever, and then she's talking on the phone. It's a good shot, like looking between the spokes of the chair that Leo's in. And she's like, oh my God, he moved. But again, it doesn't come across as sinister. It doesn't come across as whatever. It's like they're trying to have it both ways. You don't have a goofy scene and a sinister scene if you're going to have the camera on Leo, we don't know what's going to happen with it. That's a way of delaying and just saying, as writers, we don't know where the hell we're going to do with it, so we're just going to do enough to get by. Have it as a argument when Bobby comes home or something and Leo's there just watching him in the background, and we think we see him move or something, rather than these two paying him any attention at all if we wanted to keep it sinister. Because the next scene, to me, is the worst scene for her. I've defended the writing here, or the acting of the actress, which I think was what the hell's the actress's name? The one that's playing the diner lady. She is Quincy Jones' wife or daughter, I think.
Isn't her name Peggy Lipton?
Peggy Lipton, yeah. So Peggy Lipton is, well, with Peggy Lipton, do you even know who Quincy Jones is or not?
The name sounds familiar.
So the answer is no. You've heard of Michael Jackson?
Yes, of course I've heard of Michael Jackson.
And did you see you're young, you may not have. He doesn't have the same cachet as he did for quite some time there. But Quincy Jones is like this incredible arranger, composer guy. He's an old dude now. I think he's still around, and he's done a lot of films of scores. He's produced a lot of albums. He's a guy you basically say, I want to have. He's that good. Austin Members kind of had him in Gold Member in the scene early on too. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Quincy Jones, and you're like, oh, okay, that guy. And you may have gotten the thing to it, but yeah, I've defended her because I'm looking at it going, what the hell is going on here? Well, you know what? You and I had guessed right that her mom in here is the writer of the food. She's the food critic, right? I forget if it was a magazine or what. This lady's beautiful. She's the older lady. I thought had a nice role of running the RR. But yeah, it's just, even Rashida Jones, who's in The Office, was as her child. So all this time I'm like, okay, they look so familiar. Why? I get it. But her acting in this scene, I don't know. You don't want to blame an actor because they're just doing what they're told to do, and they can make things look a certain way. But this exchange is just atrocious the whole way through it. The mom came in there, saw her daughter, wrote a piece on it, told her about it afterwards. Her mom's not wrong. She acts like she's 10 years old crying about it. Why don't I want you in my life? It's just not a good scene. And again, maybe I'm sensitive to the fact that the rest of this episode has sucked. And so by now I'm just looking to poop on everything. But it just doesn't work. Norma, that's the name of the character, yeah. I believe. And we know that Norma's mom's new husband is a character that got introduced because he was the cellmate of Hank. So we have this, if you think about it, we have kind of this historical thing. You have Norma and her husband, who was in prison. We got Norma's mom and her husband in prison. They're basically the same person in a sense, except for Norma's mom seems a bit more established or put together. So it's kind of like, even that hasn't even been emphasized at all here. Norma's mom's husband has just been the guy that knows numbers, and we know he's kind of keeping stuff away from her, but he seems like he genuinely loves her. We don't know until we get into the next scene. So before we get into that, I ranted again too much on this whole, waitress diner scene. What's your take on it?
No, you're right. It's really just, it's a chore to get through, and she tells her, "Get out! I'm done with you," and blah 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 blah. The next scene is thankfully more interesting, and it proves that her Norma's mother's fiance is actually just a piece of shit. We're at One-Eyed Jack's. I don't exactly remember the transition piece. I don't think it was just a sign for One-Eyed Jack's. I feel like it was very just thrown in there like the rest. But it's Hank and Ernie. And they've enjoyed themselves with some girls' company. And they go in to the office. And Hank is going about telling Ernie, "I want you to do what I said. I want you to steal from Norma's mom." And Ernie's trying to say, no, I'm on the straight. She'll know. And then Jean Renault comes in. And I don't know if this is just me, but Jean and Hank look really similar.
No, I kind of see that too. It's not something that jumped out at me, but you're right. It's off-putting when two characters look similar, and not with the obvious, same actors playing Maddie and Laura, and it's a hair color change. Their face and the way their hair they do look similar. They do.
Yeah. We finally get a brief explanation of that night that Jean found Hank and held a gun to his head. But they quickly write it off as, oh, I had my
prosecutor's badge.
Yeah.
Which is the guy that was in the eating, having the pie or whatever, late night with Norman by himself, the big guy. And I think when you saw the badge, it said like 6'2", 325 or whatever, because he's a big fella and all that too. So it's like, because I saw that, it makes me think less of Jean here, because he seems to be a competent, guy, really kind of evil. And it's like, didn't you at least even look at the badge? Because we as a viewer, if we can see that, and I'm telling you, people with VHSs would stop and pause and try to pick out details. Maybe it wasn't available on the TV broadcast, but now on DVD, checking out, you're going, how could he have missed this as a smart dude running the place?
Here's the thing, though. He didn't miss it. That night, when he held the gun to him, he says, this doesn't look like you. And that's the last we see.
Well, maybe.
So I think that explanation is also, like most of this episode, bullshit.
Okay.
But they talk about how they need cash immediately. I don't remember exactly how much. And then at that moment, because Hank is trying to sell Ernie pretty much to Jean, Ernie bolsts himself up, going on and on. But the interesting thing about this scene is the guy that comes in with a Jean looks just like the Mountie.
What's the Mountie? Yep.
It's the Mountie. Yeah. And after Ernie finished bolstering himself up, they basically say, "Oh, go ahead, go gamble." And Jean wants Cooper pretty much ruined. He wants his life ruined. And I'm pretty sure, hands drugs to the Mountie and says that he wants them planted on him. And that's the last of this scene. It's the most interesting scene thus far, but there's still something off about it to me. This entire episode feels like it's just had an off day.
And again, with the killer being revealed and resolved here, and technically, say episode 7, 8, 9, let's say, a little mini arc, if you want to call it that. I don't know if you definitively want to say it was in episode 7 or 1 or whatever, but here, I agree with you. It almost feels like it's Twin Peaks, but I think that what's so jarring about this episode is that, okay, now we're just going into the soap opera part, and we don't have very little mystery, so we get some characters, I think, that writing-wise, it's okay, we're going to have to introduce them at this point here so we can finish up the season, and of course, they still have to go get renewed. Wasn't necessarily an automatic at the time, so you wanted to make sure that you went out with your best episodes for chances of it. And to even further illustrate my point, at this point, we don't even care about Catherine Martell at this point. I mean, we kind of do, but we don't know where she's going. We don't know what's going on with a lot of these characters. We see the seeds of different things that can go up, but even this next scene, which is real quick, and there's some outdoor transitions, like a nice, little moonshot or whatever. But you got Truman, who got played bad by Josie. Josie shows up on his door, a bunch of smoke marks on her face and all that, and she just kind of collapses to the floor, and it's late at night. And of course, he just does a sucky face with her, even though he was grilling her the last time these two were on screen together, because his gut instinct knows she's not on the up and up, but he still is emotionally attached to her thanks to having lots of sweet relations. But even he, not apparently knowing that Catherine was Tojimura, it's like, okay, his instincts is good for the woman he's having sex with rather than this older lady that's a rich one that he knows is having an affair. That makes absolutely no sense at all in terms of his character, because if anything, the woman you're involved with, you would think you'd have less of an ability to, especially in his state with Josie, rather than somebody that you don't care about. You think your guts would go off more on the other one. So to me, this almost makes him look a little bit weak here. And it's not a very quick scene, but then we do get, another shot of these two, and you're like, okay, she's going to be back in here. I see how this is going. Then we get like a little outdoor tree cutaway scene till we get to the final scene, which we'll hold on for. But anything in this particular scene stands out to you?
No, yeah, it's everything that you just said, and
I don't care about her, so I don't care where this goes. That's the whole problem. And I said before, you got to at least care about some of the characters or something, because even if the story sucks, if you like the character enough, you'll suffer through it as a watcher. And here I'm going, well, who do I really care about? You're reintroducing some characters we haven't seen a lot of, which is okay. It's nice. They're not main characters. Maybe they'll have a bigger arc. I certainly don't mind them having a lot of characters, and I think we know a lot of them, but that's different than having less characters but being emotionally invested in them, because when you're attempting to do something like this, have a ton of characters and they're not always on screen, it's not the easiest juggling act to give them an opportunity to shine, where as a watcher you get sucked into their particular storyline.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Josie, I try to give her the benefit of the doubt. I don't know why the hell she's there. She shouldn't be there. She's supposed to be in Hong Kong. That's the last we saw of her. She was going to the plane.
It's just a hard reset on everything, it seems like.
Yeah, if it's been 4 to 5 days, where the hell has she been? Why is she there? She obviously couldn't have flown back and ended up like that and, oh no, Harry. No, this is just, we need a better explanation, and if there isn't one, I don't know. And the final scene of this episode, the end, the woods, a slow pan. Dale's finally out with the Major. They talk about how there are powerful forces of evil out there, and the Major's telling Dale that basically he's blessed because the gifts that he has manages to catch these spirits, keep them away from him. And that's when he mentions the White Lodge.
Yeah.
But we don't get an explanation because the Call of the Wild calls to Dale. And he says there's nothing like urinating out in the open air before walking off to find a tree. That's when we hear an owl over both the Major and Dale. And all of a sudden, a light shines, and Dale's trying to call for the Major and goes back to the site, but doesn't see him. He sees the light off in the distance in the woods, and Dale goes after it. And as he's standing there with his face lit, the light shuts off and freeze. That's the end.
Well, I like this scene. It's the most Twin Peakish of all of it. And I think that, again, relationships, sometimes even if you don't like the characters, are the story and all that too. So even though, like, say, Shelley and Bobby aren't the nicest of people, they have a relationship and we understand what it's based off, which is sucking each other's face. And we're seeing how that is not really positive in a long-term sense per se, especially now because looks like he's going to maybe move on to Audrey, and we don't know what she's going to do. We'll see. This scene, we've seen Major Garland Briggs only 1 or 2 times. We saw him a few episodes ago when Cooper rounded people up. So it seems like he's a VIP, very important person and figure in the show, even though he's not on at all. And just the way this actor gets his lines and the way he talks, it's a very meta sort of feel to it. And we know Cooper's got a quirky way of talking about him. So this scene works. You got 2 kind of weird individuals that don't really know each other, but for some reason they connect on a certain wavelength about things. Maybe that's because of age and wisdom, even though Garland Briggs is a lot older. He's, of course, Bobby's father. We don't see a lot of those 2 together. So the Major's been kept an arm length away here, too. If you or I said any of these lines while we were camping, we'd be laughing at each other, throwing beer balls, saying, "You're an effing idiot. You sound stupid. Ooh, where'd you get that from?" But the way the Major says it, he's saying it not like he knows what he's saying or owns it, but like he's had the wisdom of 50 years of having to deal with whatever he's talking about with the White Lodge and the medical, physical aspects of life, which is what old guys do and young people blow them up because it's kind of stupid. But Cooper says the only line that I think we as a watcher care about in the show up to this point, and we have to care about it to enjoy all the side shenanigans that are going on. He says, "Major, I've been spending a lot of time lately thinking about Bob, if he exists and if he's real." And it's like you can almost tell Major Briggs is waiting for Cooper to come around to what may be the truth. In other words, he doesn't lead Cooper anywhere. He's waiting for Cooper to be present and in the moment to hear what he has to say about something universal. And that Bob, the spiritual element, which nobody else even seemed to question. It's okay, Laura died and this is what happened, we have a funeral, now it's all gone, but we know that the father was supposedly it, but he was inhabited by a spirit, which is the freakiest thing that we can think about the show. And they pay zero attention to it until the end of this episode. But it's interesting too, because like you say, when he's got to go make Tinkle, we know that something's going to happen because that's how TV is. Then that's fine. But Nelson Briggs is not in his gear here. He's in his regular woodsman gear, whatever, which is kind of a nice scene. The owl shot is tremendous, because while he's tinkling, he just looks up and we see an owl kind of watching them, or both of them, moving his head, hooting a little bit. I like sometimes these lingering shots that might mean something or not. We've talked about owls before, trees. We've talked about the stoplight, I think, is what you brought up, which I don't know if we've seen that lately. And in this episode, we even talked about the stairs looking up at the ceiling fan. It's just shots that were used as transition shots, but they stood out because they didn't seem appropriate. But maybe we're just getting trolled. But the thing you didn't mention, which I am going to mention here, is that when the white light, he's calling out the major and he runs back for a split second, and it happens really, really fast. It doesn't linger. When he gets up to the campfire and this white bright lights all around, this is of course pre-X-Files that use this white light a lot. There's a shadowy robed figure in the distance that you get a silhouette watching them.
Yes.
And an episode. And you're like, okay, I guess the takeaway here is White Lodge, Major Briggs is gone. What the hell? I don't mind this, but you kind of see where Cooper's like running through it or whatever, and his eyes get real big, the light turns off, but you don't see what he's looking at fade to black, which is how you should end a show. And I have no problems with that. But now we're going, uh-oh, the first thing that comes to mind, aliens. So I don't know if I'm ready for this or not. I didn't think of Bob as an alien, but I guess maybe he could be. But it's what I mean. Twin Peaks has got a lot of things going for it. But as I said before, when I watched this the first time 30 years ago, I remember it getting off the rails in season 2, and that's the only thing I've mentioned to you. I don't remember specifically how it happened, but this is definitely the episode where it did. And so we have 10 episodes to see what happens. But I remember it ended strong. So that's all I'm going to say, because to me, it's also kind of like a first rewatch after a long period of time. So it's a disappointing episode. I liked the show enough where I kept watching it because I just said, you know what? I enjoyed the ride, so I might as well crash with them and see what happens. There's nothing that's pissed me off. But for my final thoughts, I guess sit there and go, yeah, this is the episode where people want to complain about what the hell happened to Twin Peaks. It was here, and everybody knows it. Dave Lynch, Mark Frost. Everybody watches it. It's not a secret. It's not one person huffing and railing. It's not an actor going on a hunger strike or something stupid where they threw a monkey wrench into the show. It's the damn network interfering with an artist's vision, as they often do. That's all I've got to say. What about you?
I have to agree, because going through this episode was quite something. I feel like if the last episode was in fact the end, maybe it would have left a better taste in people's mouth. But right now it's just, okay, where are we going? Because honestly, as much as I like Agent Cooper, this whole trial of his is it's nothing to me. It feels totally okay. We have to find some way to keep this going, and they push it into a situation that it doesn't belong. As for the end, even though it is the most Twin Peaksy thing we've seen, we don't understand what the hell's going on. That robed figure, I swore it was Bob, because the owls are deeply connected to Bob. And so whenever I was hearing that hooting and we saw the swoop through the woods, I was convinced, okay, Bob's going to take over somebody.
Opinion. Well, right. Yeah, well, we'll see. Next week we do episode 11, but it's a jarring episode. We'll leave it at that. We'll give it the benefit of the doubt because we've had many episodes, only one or two that were mad, but the rest are good or fantastic. So understanding it's kind of a reset for the rest of the season, we'll just see here, it's definitely the pivot point episode for it. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Twin Peaks Season 2, Episode 10 here on Xtreme TV. I'm your host, Rob, here with Professor Pixel. Next week, we'll be covering Episode 11, and we'll see where this goofy craziness takes us. As at least, no, there's an old expression that my daddy used to say, and I always remember it. If death is inevitable, behind this